Hello my friends and welcome once again to this Red Gaming Tech video, myself and Marta. Hope you guys are having a good day so far. I am here as always with the latest news from the tech world from the last 24 or so hours as of the 28th of July. Now I'm just going to get stuck right in because we have lots of news to get through, lots of Intel news as well specifically, and we're going to begin with some restructuring at the company. So, according to a report from Reuters.com, the Chief Engineering Officer Murthy Renduchintala, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, is leaving the company, and this is part of a move in which a key tech unit is actually going to be separated into 5 teams. And Intel also said that they are reorganizing their tech, systems architecture and client group, and the new leaders are going to be reporting directly to the CEO Bob Swan. Now, Murthy's spot will actually be filled by a lady by the name of Anne Kelleher, and she is going to lead development of the 7nm and 5nm chip technology processes. Now, this is pretty much straight on the heels of the fact that, well, Intel did say that, unfortunately, they were 6 months behind schedule when it comes to the 7nm tech, and of course the reports that they're going to have to turn to TSMC to give them a hand with production. But we're going to move on from that to some benchmarks up next for Intel's 10nm Ice Lake SP. So, these benchmarks were discovered by Tom EPYC over on Twitter in the Geekbench database, but Momomo also found a Sysoft Sandra listing. We'll get to that in a moment. Of course, you'll find everything I've used to source for this video linked below as usual. So as you can see from EPYC's tweet, we can see 2 processors being talked about here, 56 cores, 112 threads, and 1.5 GHz and 3.19 GHz boost. So individually that means that each chip has 28 cores and 56 threads, which of course equals 56 threads, cores, should I say, and 112 threads in total. Now, do keep in mind before I go into the benchmarks themselves that this is still an engineering sample, so you can expect this to change in terms of the specifications before the product actually launches, but you know that's business as usual when it comes to engineering samples. So for the very first score, we can see 3424 for the single core and 38079 for the multi-core, and as for the second result, we see 3443 for the single core and 37317 for the multi-core. And the Sysoft Sandra listing that Momomo found pretty much lines up with what we just saw. You can see 2 chips being shown here, 28 cores, 56 threads at 1.5 gigahertz. Now that's not all, my friends. The folks over at WCCFtech.com decided to take these results and compare them against an EPYC 7742 entry for comparison. So in this comparison, they were comparing a total of 64 cores, 128 threads from AMD against 56 cores, 112 threads from Intel. Now it was a single EPYC, so we got 1 EPYC against 2 Ice Lake SPs going here. So you can plainly see their comparison on screen, and the EPYC 7742 does win against Intel's Ice Lake SP quite handily, to be honest. At least in the single-core tests, and when the multi-core core tests are taken into consideration, AMD does come around slightly lower than the Intel Ice Lake SP parts. But again, do keep in mind that this Intel part is an engineering sample, so this story may very well change when the final chip launches, but the lead probably isn't going to be as massive as Intel would like, but obviously we'll have to wait and see on that one. Anyway, with all that said, let's move on to our next topic. As I said, we've got a lot to discuss today, and it's regarding that weird, mysterious i9-10850K. And they have been officially announced by the company. They are adding these new high-end SKUs, which, as rumoured, are 100 MHz slower than the 10900K across all frequencies. And obviously, as you would expect, they are cheaper than the full-fat 10900K. For the base clock of the chip, it's going to be 3.6 GHz with Turbo Boost Max reaching 5 GHz and Turbo Boost 2 going up to 5.1, and also supports Thermal Velocity Boost, which should reach 5.2 GHz on a single core and 4.8 across all of them. And even though these chips are slower, than the 10900K. The TDP is identical, 125 watts. As for the motherboard that you will need, unsurprisingly, you're going to need a 1200 series like the Z490, B460, H470, whatever. But obviously, as this is a high-end chip, it would make more sense with a high-end board, but obviously not everyone's budget can allow for that. As for the price tag, it is only 10% cheaper than the 10900K. It is going to be $453 US for this. And Intel are also adding some new Celeron processors, the G5 and G5 905. So there we have it. This chip has been rumoured for a little while now and has now been officially confirmed. It's pretty obvious that these chips are just meant as an answer to the refresh of the Matisse processors from AMD, that being the 3000 XT series of processors. So again, they're not meant to set the world on fire, they're just meant to be something to challenge AMD in that particular area as well. And for our final Intel topic of this video, although not the final topic of the video, just to be super safety clear, is regarding Intel's Xe. So we have something very interesting this time around, as a tweet was screenshotted by the keen-eyed folks over at videocards.com from Intel Graphics. And it says, "You've waited, you've wondered, we'll deliver. In 20 days, expect more details on Xe graphics." But, as you kind of may have guessed from how I started this topic, the tweet was swiftly deleted, but obviously not before it was screenshotted by the guys over at Videocards. Make of this what you will. It could just be that it was a mistake, it's not going to go up in 20 days, or they weren't actually ready to reveal this information. Now, one thing we should obviously remember, is they don't mention what Xe platform this is. It could be discrete or mobile. We literally don't know. Intel have already said they're going to be doing something on September the 2nd. So they could just be talking about Tiger Lake here, because Tiger Lake obviously has Xe graphics on there. So obviously we don't know what this is because Intel deleted it, and we're just left to guess in the dark as best as we can. Anyway, let's move on now to some very interesting console news regarding the next gen. So, this time around it is a very interesting report from the folks over at DigiTimes, and they are citing the back-end supply chain in Taiwan for Sony, and according to their findings, we are actually going to be seeing a shorter life cycle for the next generation consoles, and it's going to be shortened to 5 years. Now that is very, very short when you compare it to how long the PS4 and Xbox One generation went on, and the same for the PS3 and Xbox 360 generation. That went on for a very long time. And again, this report could be inaccurate, so do take it with the usual pinch of salt, TM, but this is what their statements are saying. And they're also saying that the shipments for the PlayStation 5 may reach as high as 120 to 170 million units during the 5 years it will be allegedly available. And this will obviously beat the current generation score for the PS4, which is at 110 million. And they also had a little bit to say on the Xbox Series X, stating that Microsoft is planning to ship around 60 million units of the Xbox Series X across its lifetime. Now, there is one very, very important thing to keep in mind here. DigiTimes sometimes can be reliable, sometimes not. It's kind of a bit of a mixed bag with them, because they, for example, did state that Ryzen 4000 desktop would not arrive this year, and AMD have come out and said that that just isn't true. As of anything that isn't from the mouth of the company themselves, just take it with the usual, you know what. Now, one question I do have about the shorter generation part of this is, are they counting this as the PS5 vanilla, and then we're going to get a next generation upgrade, the PS5 Pro or whatever it ends up being called, assuming it even comes out? That will be the next one. That will be at year 6, just for example. Or do they literally mean we're going to have the PS5 for 5 years and then it's going to be the PS6? It's tough to say what they mean. It could mean either. To be honest, I think that we potentially could see a PS5 Pro, but obviously whether or not we do, we'll have to wait and see. And just on a complete side note, let's say there was an Xbox Series X Pro, or upgrade, what they call it, the Xbox Series X, Triple X. We're going to go full 90s on this. In all seriousness, no. Whether or not this prediction ends up coming true, well, we're going to have to take the long route on this one, unfortunately, and just wait and see. But still, very interesting things to consider for sure. And on that note, let us finish off the video with some comments regarding Spider-Man Miles Morales on the PS5. So this time around we have the guys over at metro.co.uk to thank for this, and they themselves were reporting on the new issue of Game Informer. And although while it wasn't obvious from the initial reveal from Sony, Spider-Man Miles Morales is not a sequel, it's kind of a spin-off, and it's obviously going to have a decent amount of content in there, but it is not a full-fledged Spider-Man 2. Now apparently, according to Game Informer, to kind of increase the value for money if you were to decide to pick up the title, they're actually going to bundle the game with a remastered version of the original Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4. And it states, quote, "It comes bundled with a remastered version of Insomniac Spider-Man that takes full advantage of the PS5 hardware." So, it's going to be really interesting to see what new additions we see added to the game, that being the original Spider-Man on the PS4, when it does come out on the PlayStation 5. We could wax lyrical about this all day, about what improvements we'll see. Obviously, we'll see improved loading times thanks to the SSD, but I do wonder if we'll see anything more than just a graphical upgrade, or if we'll see some other features added in. It's really tough to say. I'm not really willing to speculate on this too much, but we could potentially see it being used to push the features a lot, given that it will undoubtedly use the same engine as Spider-Man on the PS5. We'll have to wait and see, of course, but still, pretty interesting. It's kind of disappointing it's not a full game, but we get the original with it, so if you'd never played it on the PS4, then you're golden, and if you did, well, you get it for free anyway, with a bit of a shine, a bit of polish on it. While we're on the topic of consoles, I just want to very quickly segue into something about Microsoft, and I do have some Xbox news to round off the video as well after this. We do have their financial results for the fourth quarter of this year. Yes, I know it's weird that they're already in their fourth quarter of the financial year, but what do you want from me? Financial years are weird. Now, we also have a table that was helpfully made by the folks over at CNBC, so credit to them for this, and it puts all of the results that Microsoft posted in a very easily digestible format, and you can see Xbox right at the bottom, because of course Xbox is just one small segment of what they do. Some of the TLDRs you can take away from it, however, are the revenue being $38 billion and increasing 13% compared to the same period last fiscal year, and the operating income was $13.4 billion, increased 8%, and net income, was $11.2 billion and decreased 15% on the GAAP and up 5% on the non-GAAP. As for our final topic, though, it is regarding the Medium. I have to say, this is one of the most interesting games that Microsoft have been showing at their showcases. I really like the dual reality gameplay idea. Obviously, that's not the first time we've seen this done by any means. You know, Silent Hill, hello. But it still looks really, really cool, and I love horror games, and it just looks really interesting to me. I can't wait to play it. Now, it's not why I'm here to talk about it today, but I am here to talk about some statements from the developer on the official YouTube channel for the game, and they confirmed that it will run at 4K 30 FPS for cinematic reasons, and they said, quote, "The game is 4K 30 FPS. The decision to go with 30 FPS is a result of the game's focus on a cinematic experience on one hand, and the player's ability to play in two worlds at the same time, rendered and displayed simultaneously on the other hand." Now, this is hardly surprising, given that the game does, of course, have ray tracing, and they have also revealed the minimum and recommended PC requirements for the game. And this just gives you an idea of just how much oomph you actually need to run the game at a decent resolution and frame rate. Just to look at the recommended, we see an i5 9600 or a Ryzen 7 3700X, 16 gigabytes of RAM. For 1080p, you are going to need a 1660 Ti or an RX Vega 56. For 4K, however, you're going to need an NVIDIA RTX 2070 or an RX 5700 XT. and of course DX12. And if you do want to have ray tracing, naturally you will want to have an RTX 2080 for 4K with ray tracing on. So not exactly a surprise to anyone ever that you will need a bit of a oomph to players with ray tracing, and not really all that surprised to see it 4K 30. I do wish there was an option for 4K for 60, but with the dual gameplay I can kind of see how that would be a bit of an issue, but either way I'm still looking forward to this game. Anyway, that is me done for this video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, the support is hugely appreciated. Do remember to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. It does help out a great deal, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.